Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for joining our webinar today on hybrid performance testing. Just before I pass it over to our speaker, Sharon, a few announcements. The webinar is going to be recorded, so in the coming days, you'll all get a recording by mail. We have a chance to ask questions at the end, so you should see in your GoToWebinar panel a questions tab. If you open it, you can ask a question throughout the webinar, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. And if not, we'll try and get back to you as well in the coming days. There's also going to be a short survey that pops up. If you can take those 10-15 seconds to answer that, we'd really appreciate it. It gives us feedback on our webinars, allows you to suggest topics for future webinars, and any feedback from you guys is wonderful. So I'm going to now pass it over to our presenter, Sharon, our Principal Product Manager here at BlazeMeter, and thank you so much.
Hi. Hi guys, I'm Sharon, Principal Product Manager from BlazeMeter. Yeah. So on my day-to-day, I'm in charge of making sure that our product BlazeMeter solves enterprise needs without compromise on their security and configuration flexibility. And I hope that you will enjoy from our today's webinar, and thank you for joining. So once upon a time, there were 4 main pillars in the QA industry when it comes to testing products that were out there. It was about resources, time, money, and legacy. And let's dive to what that means, right? So when it comes to resources, there were QA silos, big teams. We were running the performance tests with very specific expertise in the product. It means that you as an organization, you had to hire dedicated people with some specific expertise in a given product that you invested a lot of in implement it and educate the end user in your organizations. And those products came with a huge learning curve, meaning that it wasn't that easy to one click to get the test up and running. You had to be familiar with the entire infrastructure and the entire methodologies that those products are having in order to allow users to use them. So it's about the time that you had to invest in your people, in your resources, and also in implementation of those products, which add long and complicated implementation process. And that's basically, like in bottom line, that leads to higher price when it comes to the amount of money that you're investing in order to have up and running infrastructure that allow your users to test the infrastructures and the internal applications. When it comes and when talking about legacy, organizations were used to have an only on-premises products, meaning that the entire software, the entire product were implemented in the organization. It means that we're talking about long update cycles, meaning that the waterfall way, once in a while, once in every 6 months or 1 year, you are getting a new update to your current existing product. And there is no agility. There is no, the new world is not there, right? Today, when you're consuming a software, everything is in a few weeks, you are getting a bug fix, even if it's maybe a few days, if it's a critical bug. And that wasn't the way on the old world, on the legacy world, when we're talking about legacy methodologies, operations, and development of those products. And today we have the new world, which is very nice. People/developers are using the tools they know and widespread it. Mostly we're talking about open source tools, which are backed up by the community from SaaS platforms without compromising the security of the data. The new world basically means flexibility and agility through a modern testing approach, which is designed so teams can build test, release faster and more efficiently, while others in the organization are getting 100% visibility into the development process and testing process, which is very important. So what it actually means, right, when we're talking about agile, security, and open source and how it comes together, we're talking about support agile environments, keep the data secure and still enjoy SaaS, easily integrate with open source tool, the tools that your developers are familiar with, the tools that your developers are reading about in the internet and using and doing their experiments with, and lowering the total cost of ownership, the TCO, and the most important, innovate. Don't be tied down to legacy tools. When we're talking about the new world, basically, why to choose one tool when you can have them all? I mean, why to be tied to one single tool that you are educating the entire organization around this specific tool that might not be relevant in a few years, right? You're investing money, investing time, but the world is progressing into new approaches, new methodologies. So you can have open source and enterprise come together and providing a meaningful solution to an enterprise when it comes to your end users. And this is basically how BlazeMeter does that. For you who are not familiar with BlazeMeter, BlazeMeter is a continuous testing platform which embodies all the forms of testing at every stage of the modern development lifecycle. If it's functional GUI, if it's API functional testing, load testing, regression, and many more types of testing that we are supporting. BlazeMeter, by its nature, is a pure SaaS solution that enables you to run hundreds of tests in parallel from the cloud, but as well from behind the corporate firewall, and we will talk about it in a few slides. And of course, BlazeMeter is an open source friendly, meaning that we are supporting over 20 executors, and we're also powering open source projects in with the open source community. BlazeMeter has 3 offerings or 3 implementations. The first one is the cloud, which is 100% SaaS offering. You're just signing up in our site and you're ready to go. You can upload your scripts and run your performance tests easily. The second implementation is the private location implementation type, which is a mixture of the pure SaaS infrastructure that we are having with local engines for those enterprises or those organizations who just need to have load engines that are targeting their internal applications. They don't care about where is the entire infrastructure is sitting. They don't care about where the data itself is sitting. All they care about is having a solution that provides them with the ability to test their applications, but they need to load their internal applications that are sitting behind the firewall. For that, we have the private location implementation. And the third type of implementation is the private cloud, the hybrid solution. This one, which is very unique and patent pending, basically says, look, we can provide you with the SaaS benefits, but with the enterprise benefits, meaning that the infrastructure is sitting on the cloud, most of it, but all of your sensitive data is still being kept in the organizational boundaries behind the firewall. Nothing is leaving the firewall, the organizational boundaries. And basically it means that you are not exposing yourself as an enterprise to the outside world. You're just leveraging the benefits of the SaaS while still having your data secured inside your boundaries. So besides talking, let's watch some diagrams, because I'm a true believer in understanding what you're hearing, and connect it with some visuals. So this is the architecture for our full SaaS solution. As you can see on the left side, we have the BlazeMeter infrastructure, which basically is built of load engines that are part of the cloud. It can be Amazon, Google, or Microsoft cloud providers. Basically, we are initiating cloud engines on each of the cloud providers on demand. We have our web portal and data service, and our storage that also sits in the cloud. And on the right, you can see the organization infrastructure, which basically means firewall and internal application, which basically must be an internet-facing application, because we are targeting that application from the cloud directly to that application. So if it's not internet-facing, we won't be able to target it from the cloud itself. So this is the full SaaS solution. As you can see, nothing should be part of the internal infrastructure of the organization. Everything is in the cloud, and you're just targeting an internet-facing application that might be also internal application, but the application itself must be accessible from the internet itself. The second solution is the private location solutions, which basically means we are providing the same infrastructure, right, of the SaaS. As you can see, we have load engines on the cloud, on AWS, Google, or Azure. All of BlazeMeter infrastructure as well is on the cloud. But in that solution, the customer has local load engines that allows him to target internal application, not just internet-facing applications. All the data that is being sent back from the load engines to BlazeMeter is being kept on the cloud, meaning all the raw data, RPS, hits per second, number of users, etc. All of that, log files, all of that is being kept in the cloud under our S3 bucket. Plus, the scripts that users are uploading to the platform are being kept in the cloud as well. All the infrastructure is in the cloud. The only thing that we are bringing into the organizational boundaries are the load engine themselves. And the load engines are the one who are sending back all the data and all the results back to the cloud, where we are crunching the numbers and do some slice and dice and provide the data on the user interface, which it's basically a web portal, which again sitting in the cloud. So this is a mixture, right? It means that everything is in the cloud. You are consuming BlazeMeter as a SaaS product, but you're also having on-premise engines that's basically targeting internal applications and sending the data outside to the cloud infrastructures. As for the third implementation that I mentioned before, the private cloud, which is in hybrid solution, the bottom line on that implementation is that the sensitive data never leaves the organization's boundaries. As you can see here, on the left, we have less of infrastructure from the BlazeMeter side. And as you can see on the right, we have a bit more of infrastructure on the organizational side, meaning that all you need to do in that case is to implement the BZM data router, which is a simple gateway that basically control the data routing. So what does that mean, right? On the private cloud solution, the only meaningful information which leaves the organizational boundaries are the metadata, the raw data, the numbers themselves, the the number of users, the RPS, etc. No meaningful information is leaving the organization in such a way that basically what BlazeMeter is doing is obfuscating in a one-way hash, so you cannot decrypt that hash because it's a one-way hash, obfuscating that data and keep it on the cloud database obfuscated, 100% obfuscated with no way to decrypt it back because it's a one-way obfuscation. And when a user tries to access BlazeMeter from the internal URL, from the inside of the organization, the data router, the BlazeMeter data router component, is the one component which basically translates the obfuscated data to a meaningful strings, but the data router does that inside the organization with the keys, the secrets that are being kept inside of the organization. So it means that if someone is basically hacking my databases, BlazeMeter, no one can do a thing with that information because it's a one-way hash, which is being translated back into a meaningful string inside the organization boundaries based on a dictionary and salt that are being kept inside of the organization on a local storage that the organization is providing BlazeMeter. So as you can see in the diagram, we have here, I will just let me increase the view. As you can see in the diagram on the right side, we have the BlazeMeter data router, which basically talks with an S3 compatible storage. This storage store all the log files, store all the scripts that users are uploading to BlazeMeter, and also storing the key files that are in charge of translating the obfuscations back into a meaningful strings. So it means that when user is uploading a script and uploading a CSV file that contains some maybe sensitive data, users, passwords, social security numbers, etc., depends on your vector, of course. When user upload those files, they are not being kept in the cloud storage of BlazeMeters. They are being routed into the internal storage that is being managed by the organization, your internal storage, meaning that there is no access for those files from the outside world, meaning that all the logs that the load engines are creating and processing are taking part in the internal organization boundaries. Everything is being kept on the local storage. So you as an organization, you have your local load engines that are targeting internal application, and all the meaningful data, if it's IPs, passwords, files names, DNS overrides, etc., all of those are being kept locally. The only data that leaves the organization is some data that has zero meaning to someone if someone is trying to watch your sensitive information from the outside world. Nothing leaves the organization in that case. Okay, and the magic happens on the BlazeMeter data router, which is the gateway who routes in and out the relevant information. Is it the sensitive information? No, you can go out. If it is a sensitive information, you need to be routed into our local storage or have some processing before you are leaving the organization boundaries. So this is how users are consuming our user interface. All the API returns from BlazeMeter are being manipulated in that way that the user is seeing a meaningful information and meaningful strings, while behind the scenes there is only obfuscated strings that mean nothing if someone is trying to see it from the outside world. And we will see it in a moment when I will demo in the private cloud solution. You will see that from the outside world you cannot see any meaningful information, and the only data that you're seeing, it's long obfuscated strings that you can do nothing with it. That solution brings with him a lot of benefits from the SaaS world, because all you have to do is to once in a while update the data router component, right? While the BlazeMeter SaaS product is being updated every 2 weeks. So it means that every 2 weeks as an organization, you are getting a new version of BlazeMeter without do any maintenance, updates, or installations on your side. All you need to do is to make sure that in case there is an update for the BZM data router, you need to make sure it's up to date. But if you're already running with the latest version, you're enjoying the benefits of having a new version of BlazeMeter each time we are releasing the SaaS product, because the logic, the core product itself is the SaaS, while the data still being kept inside, and the only thing that allows that is that data router that consume the relevant system from the cloud, but provides you the data from the inside of the organization. A lot of talking, and I believe that I was repeating myself about the messaging of how it's important to have agility, open source, being open source friendly, and still being secured, and how BlazeMeter, together with the private cloud solution, brings that. Let's see a short demo on how it looks like from the outside world versus how it looks like from the inside world.
Okay, so this is my private cloud environment, my Sharon-PC in via BlazeMeter. This is my private cloud implementation. Let's create a test and see how it looks like through private cloud, and I will also show a comparison on how it looks like from the external/public network. So let's create a test. Let's create a performance test. Let's give it a name. So I'm going to demo a YAML script, which is behind the scenes going to run a grinder script. So let's call it grinder test. Let's upload a script file. Great. As you can see, the file is validating, and I have some errors. It says that that scenario is not available in my script, and yep, this is right. As you can see, my scenario name is request sample and not request sample _1. So let's fix this. Let's save the script and re-upload the script. Let's give it a moment to validate. And great, the validation has passed, and as you can see, we have 2 executions here. One which is going to run for 20 concurrency, the second one is going to run for 30 concurrency. We're going to have an old flow for 1 minute and 30 seconds of a ramp up. Same for the second execution. Because this is a private cloud, I'm mentioning the specific hardware that I want to run the test on. This is the same when you are running with the on-premise engines with the private location implementation. those are our scenarios, the request sample and the second request sample. Both of them are targeting those URLs that you can see here. So this is my Grindr test YAML that we will run in a moment. In addition to that, let's also configure some DNS overrides. So for instance, let's do my VIP URL.corp, right? And this is the override that we will give it to that URL. Great, this is the URL, this is the IP that's going to be overridden during the test run, and basically we're ready to go. All we need to do is click the run test. And yes, we have two engines, one engine per scenario in that case. Each scenario represents a label, and we have total virtual users, 50 virtual users that are going to run in this test. And the duration is going to be 1 minute, which is the old for, and additional 30 seconds for the ramp up. Let's launch the engines in my environment. So while the engines are initiating, we were talking about the fact that the scripts that we are uploading and the log files, everything is being kept behind the firewall inside the organizational boundaries, right? In the local S3 compatible storage that the organization is providing. So nothing is leaving the organization. So in my lab, I'm using Minio. This is a software storage. This is my Minio. And as you can see, I will drill down here, and those are the two sessions that are just now started based on the script that we the test that we ran. If I will enter those sessions, I will see a lot of logs. Those logs are not leaving the organization. And going to data, you can see here, this is the script that I just uploaded. As you can see, it's not being sent to the cloud, it's being saved on the local storage behind the firewall. Okay, so this is what I was talking about when we was talking about having the files kept locally and not leaving the organization. By the way, this is the key files that translates the hashes into meaningful strings that we also were talking about during the presentation. So we have our test up and running. As you can see, this is the information which is represent the test itself. If I will navigate to the timeline report, I would be able to see my two scenarios here, my request sample and my second request sample, right? As you can see here. I also would be able to see it on the request stats, my two labels. My test is containing some errors, so I would be able to see the number of errors that I had in my test. And of course, on the original test configuration, I would be able to see the test configuration. By the way, I don't know if you are familiar with, every report can be filtered by a scenario, so I can select the specific scenario / label that I want to see part of its information in the report, and it will filter the report based on the selected scenario. Same if I had several locations, I would be able to filter by the location as well. So let's add some notes to that test. So this is my Grindr test example. Let's save that note. Great. So this is my report, which is nice. Let's see how it looks like from the outside world. I will switch between the screens, and this is how my account looks like from the outside world. I will refresh it to see the last test that we created. This is the grinder test. As you can see, it's a grinder test. Let's see the configuration. This is how it looks like from the outside world. And again, as you can see here, the URL, this is the external application, the SaaS application. So if I'm, as a BlazeMeter administrator, trying to access a private cloud account from the outside world, I'm getting that notification which says that I'm accessing a private cloud account from the public network, and B, everything is view only. I can't do, I can't run the test, I can't even delete the test, nothing, not even renaming it. And as you can see, I can't see the files because the files are not accessible from the outside world. And the DNS override, do you remember that we modified the DNS override? As you can see here, this is a one-way long hash that was a meaningful string when we looked at it on the private cloud configuration, but here, and I will do a screen side-by-side screen, here it has this is how it looks like from the inside, and this is how it looks like from the outside world. So I have no way to understand the meaning of these configurations. I have zero access to files. Let's look on the report, right? So this is the report that we ran a moment ago. And if I will try to select a scenario, as you can see, even the scenarios here are hashed. Even the notes are hashed. I have nothing to do with that. And same would be on each of those tabs here. So let's say if someone is hacking BlazeMeter and has some access to the database, all they can see is only long hashes that mean nothing, right? No access to files, no access for meaningful information. If I will even go to the error tabs, I won't be able to understand what are the labels and the scenarios. And even for original test configuration, everything is hashed here. I have nothing to do with that report in that case. Okay, let's say that someone is trying to share a report, right? Make it shareable for others and make it public for others. Let's go for the grinder test report that we just created. Great. And let's make this report shareable by sharing, enabling the share option on that report. I'm having a shareable link. I will copy that link. And by the way, in real life situation, this URL, this private cloud URL must and would be internal URL, meaning that no one from the outside world, from the public network, won't be able to resolve that address and won't be able to even navigate to this address, because of the this address should be resolved from the internal DNS servers only. So in that demo, I'm using AWS as my infrastructure, so this is why it's a public URL that is available for the outside world. But in real life situation, that won't be the case. So this is a different thing that we need to take into consideration, that URL, that internal application URL, is not available from the public network. Let's copy that URL, and I will go back here to show you how it looks like from the outside world. Again, this is a public URL, and even if I will use the public token in order to see that the shared report, you would be able to see that the information also here is hashed. Same for the timeline report, right? The request stats, the errors, even in the origin test configuration and scenarios, everything is hashed. There is nothing to do with that scenario, with that report. Even if someone is trying to access the executive summary, they will get hashed information, which means nothing from the public network. Same as all the reports that BlazeMeter is providing, that would be hashed as well. And again, this URL won't be available for any standard user. This is the way I'm familiar with that URL, is because I have admin permissions, plus I'm familiar with that specific URL that I copied from a private cloud environment. But again, that information means nothing because it's hashed. So this is all about how your information is staying secured with using open source. In that specific example, we use Grindr, leveraged by Taurus behind the scenes, that's doing all the magic. And we saw that the files, the log files, the script files, even if it's data files, everything is being stored behind the firewall inside the organization. And the rest of the metadata, the numbers, are leaving the organization to the database in the cloud. And the strings are being hashed in such a way that that the strings means nothing to someone who tries to read them. One thing, important thing which is worth mentioning, in private cloud we support all the other tools that we are supporting in the SaaS offering, meaning that if you want to use the proxy recorder in your private cloud environment, we support that by having proxy recorder microservice that is being launched on-prem together with the same as the load engines are being initiated and spinned up. Same for Chrome extension and the load runner converter that we are providing as well as part of the private cloud implementation. So basically you are getting the entire BlazeMeter experience with minimum efforts, minimum infrastructures on your side, minimum maintenance, and getting the maximum from the application itself, based on us as BlazeMeter. When we're releasing new versions, the customers, the private cloud implementation customers and users, are getting the latest version behind the scenes. And this is how you're keeping your information behind the firewall, but leveraging the cloud benefits and having open source tools under your hands, allowing you to use the latest versions, the latest technologies, with small to zero learning curve. And that's it. Thank you.
The private cloud, we have two challenges. It's what we are doing about maintenance, right? We, as kind of an on-prem hybrid product, most of the time when you are deploying on-premise products, the maintenance, it's something that you feel on your day-to-day basis. And the second challenge is that the information must stay secured, right? So private cloud solves them both by keeping your sensitive data inside the organization boundaries behind the firewall, and minimizing or reducing the maintenance to zero, because you are getting and being served of the latest application from the SaaS without the need to deploy anything or install. And that's it, basically. As for the business result, of course, data security and efficiency. Again, no need to that cycle of updating and maintaining and make sure that everything works as expected each time every version is being released, etc., and how it affects my current scripts, etc. You are being up to date all the time and getting the latest versions without compromising your security, because everything is being kept in the organization itself. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed. Questions?
So thanks so much, Sean. Just to remind you all, there is the GoToWebinar panel, so you can type in any questions you have. And like I said, we will try to answer as many as possible and get back to the rest in the coming days, and as well send you a recording of the webinar. So let's start with some of the questions. So first question. If someone is hacking BlazeMeter's infrastructure, how exposed will I be as a customer?
Well, that's a great question. As I mentioned, regarding the private cloud implementation, all your scripts and data files and log files are being kept locally inside the organization data center behind the firewall. So basically on BlazeMeter, we are not storing any logs, scripts, and data files which are related to private cloud customers. The only data that we are keeping on our databases is numbers, the raw data, and the one-way hashed strings, which cannot be reverted because you need to have the key files and the secrets, etc. So it means that if someone is hacking our database, our infrastructure, there is no way that the sensitive data would be part of that information that you would see, because A, the data is not really there, the files are being kept behind the firewall, and B, the obfuscated information means nothing. It means nothing, right? One more interesting thing is that there is no way to even start or schedule or delete tests from the outside world. It means that those operations that I just mentioned, like initiating a test or scheduling a test or deleting a test, for instance, those can be only sent from the inside of the organization. We have our own mechanisms which basically sign that operations and make sure that no one from the outside world is able to trigger a test from the outside or deleting a test. So your entire infrastructure is safe and no one can influence what's going on inside the organization, because we had that vision in front of our eyes that the private cloud solution must be secure as possible to provide our customers the safe way to keep their data, and leveraging BlazeMeter and its SaaS capabilities inside the organization.
All right, thank you. We have another question about someone manages their containers on Kubernetes. Do you support that, or what else do you support?
Yeah, so I didn't talk about how our load engines are working and what is the technology behind that, but a few lines regarding that is that we are working based on Docker, meaning that if you want to use BlazeMeter with the vanilla Docker, good for you. We are ready for that. As well for Kubernetes, if you are working with Kubernetes, we are working with Kubernetes as well. We know how to leverage the Kubernetes orchestration capabilities and spin up engines through Kubernetes, as well as other orchestration tools that there are out there, but it depends on your infrastructure, of course. But as for your question, yes, we are supporting Kubernetes, and that's it for that one.
We have a few people asking, what is the implementation and setup? Is it an easy process? Is it time consuming? You mentioned about, obviously the old world and the new world. How easy is it to implement?
Well, as I mentioned before, the magic component is the BlazeMeter EZM data router. This is the component who controls the data and route it outside and inside for the use of the platform. Besides that component, we also have the load engines, which are being managed by our own developed orchestration component. So all you have to do is to implement by a simple installer, implement the data router, then just navigate to your internal application, which represents BlazeMeter inside the organization, and download your load engines, deploy by just running a one run Docker command, and that's it, you're ready to go. Simple as that. The mindset around that is, again, thinking SaaS, thinking agile, thinking flexibility. No need for monsters deployments that requires the entire organization to take part of that deployment. We try to do it as easy as possible, as 1, 2, 3, easy as that.
So you mentioned and you showed in like the demo some of the testing, and some people are asking about ensuring about the data when you're sharing reports. You mentioned also 100% visibility for collaboration, and so how can you ensure that your reports are sharing with different people of the organization, but not showing that sensitive data?
So the basic, as we mentioned it, is that there is no meaningful data in the database that sits outside on the cloud, right? So let's say that I'm having a URL, shareable report that I generated, and I'm sending it to my friend in some other company. That friend, hey, he doesn't have any access to the internal BlazeMeter URL, so he should be that more smart than that, and in order to modify the URL, but that's fine. Let's say that he did it and he modified the URL for the SaaS application. It still means that the information that report shows, it's obfuscated. You won't be able to see any meaningful data. You won't be able to access files and logs, and you won't be able to access any meaningful information because we, as BlazeMeter, we don't keep any files and meaningful information outside. So the only way to access that report inside the organization is the only way. I mean, otherwise it will be a useless report that no one can do a thing with, because it will contain a list of hashes and empty fields. You'll stay secured if you try to share your report, your shareable reports. Hope it answers that.
Thank you, Shawan, for your wonderful presentation and your insights into private cloud and hybrid performance testing and showcasing. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for taking your time out today to join us. Just to remind you that the webinar is being recorded. So in the coming days, you'll get a link to the video in your inbox. And if you can take those 10 to 15 seconds to answer our survey at the end of the webinar, it would really be great. It gives us feedback for our webinars, and you can suggest topics for future webinars. And really, we want to create the best content for you guys and to be able to provide you with as much value as possible. You can check out our other webinars and other resources at blazemeter.com/resources, and you can follow us on our blog as well, where we post not only about BlazeMeter products, but just about tips, tutorials from all types of open source tools, JMeter, Selenium, and so on. So really take advantage of that as well. And we hope to see you at our upcoming webinars. Thank you again to Shawan, and good day to everyone.